I think I never really wanted to be a founder. Like stablecoin powered cross-border payments is a very competitive space. The foreign remittance market from Saudi Arabia is a $40 billion market, right?
How were you able to get that initial traction?
A lot of respect for people that kind of bootstrap and kind of build things from scratch and don't go after funding.
What is your advice and experience on building a product? Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nalikes Podcast. I'm Asif, and in each episode, we bring you insightful conversations with the founders and builders in Web3. Our goal here is to educate and inspire you guys who are Web3 founders while showcasing what other successful founders are doing for their projects and startups. Make sure you watch till the end, as you will learn practical and actionable steps that you can apply to your projects and startups today. Today's guest is Rami, who is the founder of Sorbet. Rami, welcome, my man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me, Talha.
Yeah, I think we met like 3 years ago in Riyadh when I just walked into the garage, and that's how we connected. And it has been very inspiring to see your journey from, I think you were a part of the Antler program, and then now, you have a startup where you're raising. So we'll talk about all these things, but our main goal, Rami, is to ask you questions throughout your journey, especially in Web3, and just extract lessons for other founders and so on. But before we do that, I want to know who you are, what is your background, and how did you end up with Sorbet?
Yeah,
And I want to know the meaning of Sorbet as well for the audience, because that's very interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure. So yeah, no, my name is Rami, born and raised in Canada. Had the opportunity to live in various countries. So I lived in the US, and my family moved into Saudi Arabia back in 2003, where I spent most of my time. Went back to Canada to study computer science. Started my career at Deloitte's AI practice in Montreal. But I always had a very strong interest for blockchain technologies. I got introduced to it to a friend a while ago, and kind of been hooked since then. I even wrote my final paper in university about this back in 2017. So like that kind of led me to quit my job in 2021 to kind of dive into this whole Web3 space. So did a bit of like smart contract development, started working as a freelancer, and then kind of fell into this whole entrepreneurial journey when we won a hackathon in Indonesia from a top L1. And yeah, been building since then.
One of the questions that I ask everyone is, why did you decided to become a founder? I mean, there are so many other paths in Web3. You could have joined a team, or you could have done so many things. Why become a founder? And then just share your thought process on others that are watching that might be thinking of becoming a founder, because as we both know, it's not an easy journey. So what was your thought process in figuring out that, okay, I want to go and solve this particular problem? Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I never really wanted to be a founder. So like I did have like I always find a lot of fun in like building projects from scratch. Not necessarily a founder. We created an association when I was in university. I even opened a cafe in Montreal right before COVID. So I believe I still always had this entrepreneurial mindset. But like this whole Web3 tech founder, it was never kind of my ambitions. But yeah, I kind of fell into it. So when I quit my job, so I was kind of took some time off. This was like end of 2021, and traveled a bit in Southeast Asia. And then, yeah, at that point, after a couple of months off, I really wanted to find a job again, but in Web3. So I started applying. I got some offers from like an L1, from other blockchain companies. But at that same time, we participated in a hackathon, and there was like a promise of a grant. So I'm like, oh, why not? Kind of, they're providing me the money and the means to do so. So that's how I started like Thrive-In, which was like initial project that I had with that we've built with a friend in Indonesia. And yeah, one thing led to another. We've been building Thrive-In for over a year, and that kind of gave me the taste of the startups and kind of building from scratch, and found a lot of fun doing so. And yeah,
Yeah.
one thing led to another. Thrive-In wasn't able to kind of take off, and And yeah, then again, I started applying for jobs in Web3 again, got a couple of offers. And at that same time, I got accepted in the Antler cohort in Riyadh, which was quite an experience. And yeah, just decided to kind of go with that again and give it a second shot, essentially.
Amazing. So if we were to summarize, you never really wanted to become a founder. It was like your path led you to it, right?
Yeah, kind of fell into
And
it for sure.
and
Yeah.
then I think one thing, common thing I see in most of the people that I talk to is that they just enjoy building. They want to
Mhm.
build stuff. So it's like amazing. You mentioned the hackathon was one of the reasons that your company existed. So what would you say to other founders who never have participated in a hackathon and get in a Web3 hackathon? Do you encourage them to participate in these hackathons because these hackathons might help them realize what they want to do or just become familiar with what's going on in the industry?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I think yeah, it's quite funny because even for my first job, like that kind of also was initiated by a hackathon. Like Deloitte had a hackathon on small cities, and I think it's quite interesting to do hackathons because you kind of think about innovation in a way. So it's like, yeah, you're in a room with like other very interesting people, and you get to work on like this very kind of abstract topic, and yeah, kind of get a bit creative and kind of use your skills to build something interesting. And most of the time, something really interesting might come out of it, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, you get to experiment and speak with mentors and kind of brainstorm on a couple of ideas. And yeah, I mean, if you're lucky enough, you get to potentially get funding out of that, or like find a co-founder doing a hackathon, and yeah, just yeah, take it on
Yeah.
from there.
And it's funny that my journey, as I told you as well, was started with a hackathon from AWS as well. So yeah, I think there is something with hackathons. So do participate in hackathons. You mentioned you were a part of the Antler cohort. Do you mind running us quickly? How did you get in? How was the experience? And is this something that founders should consider being a part of, or they should just ignore this stuff and focus on building? Like, what would you advise that? Because there are a lot of cohorts and accelerator programs in Web3. I'm recently a part of a program called Forma Fellowship, so I'm learning a lot. But what is your advice for other founders, and what was your experience?
Yeah, it really depends what you want to get out of it, right? So like I remember when I joined Antler, I mean there was promise of like funding, and like I also always had, because like Saudi Arabia, having grew up here, I always wanted to move back because like as you know, like the whole region is kind of booming, and like a lot of nice opportunities and a lot to do when it comes to like innovation. So like I just joined, and Antler was a quite kind of an interesting program because you don't go in with a team, you can't go in with like a specific idea. You kind of go in to find a co-founder, which is what I needed back in the time. So I joined Antler, and the program is yeah, kind of structured in a way where like there's 70 other founders that have been kind of handpicked from a bigger pool of applicants. And you have like three types of personas, right? You have like technical founders, you have more operators and business founders, and then you have like people with like domain expertise. So this like in the specific like vertical, they have like very deep expertise. And the goal there is like as like a technical founder to potentially become co-founder with either like a business person and or like someone with domain expertise, and kind of brainstorm ideas and kind of bring it to the investment committee where you get funding, right? So yeah, I mean for me it was quite good at the time because I did needed like Saudi Arabia. Building a startup in Saudi Arabia is not easy. So like kind of Antler was kind of a soft landing for founders that want to build a company in Saudi. So like there's a lot of things from like getting the MISA license to yeah, it's not as easy as like you would pay a specific amount in the UAE and you can open a company there. There's like a couple of requirements that are needed and need to be met to actually open a company here. So Antler was a means for me to kind of open a company in Saudi and also find a co-founder and get investment. So quite happy I did that, but yeah, again, like I have a lot of respect for people that kind of bootstrap and kind of build things from scratch and don't go after funding because as you've seen, there's a lot of like bootstrap finders that are able to like generate revenue, find more product market fit without having investors on the cap table. So a lot of respect to those people too.
Yeah, amazing. So after Antler, I mean, it is clear that you found a lot of value with there from there, and you have this company there. So And I know about your product like Sorbet, what you're doing, but if you want to explain what is Sorbet and what problem is it trying to solve for the founder, and mainly I'm most interested in how you come across this problem because you mentioned you were working on Thrive-In, which was sort of similar,
Mhm.
but do share that thought process that how did you come across a problem? Because most of the founders that I work with, they are working on problems that do not matter. But
Mhm.
in my opinion, the problem that you are working on is actually one that matters to a lot of people, especially in developing countries. So let's start with that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I mean, going back to when I started Thrive-In, so when I was in university, I was really into like the whole creative scene, the whole gig economy scene. Had a lot of friends like doing events, but also people who were artists or like graphic designers. And there was always like a this thing where yeah, it was kind of hard to find gigs. It was also hard for a lot of people to receive payments. So like as a Web3 native, you knew that like blockchain payments was the future of payments, even like back in the time, right? Like you can send money to anyone anywhere for a fraction of a cent and it would be instant. So kind of using those concepts and kind of building like a social fi. It was like a LinkedIn for creatives uh, where you can actually connect with people, build a network of people, and it would make it easier for you to find work and then get paid. Because what we've come to see is like 72% of people actually find work on LinkedIn because of network effects, right? So like network effects is the easiest way to find a job, and that was much needed in like the gig economy. So yeah, that was like the initial idea. Also like a yeah, using blockchain and yeah, stablecoin payments to kind of simplify payments within the gig economy because sometimes it's like a 2-3 week or month engagement and it's like a lump sum payment and that's it. You don't need like contracts and um yeah, like payroll or and all that stuff. So that was like the initial idea. Um, and then I mean it was too broad and like we were trying to target non-Web3 people at that time, so like really abstracting all like the complexities of blockchain technology, but I believe like it was still not mature enough, like back in 2021. It was a bit harder to kind of yeah bridge between like fiat and USDC and or any like stablecoin and all of that. So I think that was like lessons learned, but like then like it was my first time building a startup and then you learn a lot right throughout that whole process. You really learn how to do like go to
Were,
market.
were you able to get traction for Thrive-In?
Yeah, we had a bit more than like 300 people on the platform, but yeah, like it was also like we were trying to fundraise during crypto winter. um so yeah, like yeah, that was a bit more bootstrapped kind of project. Trying to raise during crypto winter, which was a bit hard, so we just decided to kind of move away from the project. But yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned how did you come across, but now what is Sorbet? Because you mentioned a social fi platform where creators can connect, and you did mention uh, payments, but now I think Sorbet has morphed into a payments only platform. So
Mhm.
tell us about that. What is Sorbet and who are the users of Sorbet?
Yeah, so yeah, like throughout that whole process we've seen like we're talking to people, there was just a lot of pain in receiving cross-border payments. And initially this was because of like incompatible payment rails, right? So like in the US, they have ACH Wire. In Europe, SIPA. But in Saudi, or like across the MENA region, sometimes it's hard to receive money because like you have like Swift payment, which is like the cross-border payment rail, the traditional cross-border payment rail, which was like designed 50 years ago. But that was only available to like businesses. So as an independent, or as a freelancer in Morocco or Egypt or even Saudi Arabia, it's impossible for me to receive money. And even I like got that problem while I was opening my company in Saudi. I didn't have a local bank account yet, and I worked with like a service provider, and he sent me an invoice, um, and I wasn't able to pay him, like neither through my Canadian bank account nor my Wise wallet. Right, I needed to find someone on the ground who had an international bank account, and he kind of did the exchange. But yeah, like if you don't know people on the ground, sometimes it's impossible. And to the
Yeah,
extent where there's like a report that says like 70% of people actually miss out on income opportunities due to
exactly.
incompatible payment rails. So like that
Yeah,
was the initial thing that we were building, really like helping independents kind of receive money. And then what we've seen is like this space, like stablecoin powered cross-border payments, is a very competitive space, right? Because it's easy to like integrate a couple of service providers and you have like a global payment solution from day one. But like what we've seen is like what we really focus on is like Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia, like now you can do KYC. Like crypto is legal; you can buy and sell crypto in the
Really?
UAE, even in Bahrain, Qatar,
Yeah.
or like a US or a lot of countries like Thailand. But Saudi Arabia, that's still impossible, right? And so like the banks and the regulators have a very strong appetite. But like talking about Saudi Arabia, you have a very like the foreign like cross like the Saudi remittance, like the foreign remittance market from Saudi Arabia is a $40 billion market, right? So like it's the third after the US. I think US is like 83, UAE is like 41, Saudi is 40. But what we've seen like with that cross border, like being with the key corridors being like India, Pakistan, Philippines, and Egypt, is like most of them take between like 1 to 3 days. The fees are between like 2.5 to 4.5%, sometimes even higher, and most of them are actually cash based or using like outdated systems. So like as an independent worker, um like I would find an agent and then he would kind of help me send money or like off ramp it in an agent through an agent in India. So like that's kind of the market that we're targeting. It's a growing market. We believe that it's going to like surpass UAE just because of Saudi Arabia's kind of commitments to kind of bring startups. There's like a startup boom through the National Technology Development Program that has a key incentive to like incentivize startups to come to Saudi Arabia. You also have like 14 mega projects under development in Saudi Arabia, and that requires like a lot of independent workers that need to send money back home. And there's also a bigger number of SMEs. There's like $1,300,000, 1,300,000 SMEs in Saudi Arabia, which is like almost triple of the size of the UAE. So, and all of these people, with like independent workers, agencies, or SMEs, they all struggle like with cross-border payments, right? So that's how like Sorbet kind of came to it, and it's like we're focusing on cross-border remittances from and to Saudi Arabia using stablecoins.
Very interesting. So let me understand it better. So I have a business in Bahrain,
Mhm.
as you know, and we work with clients all over the world. And the way we accept payments is USDC, USDT directly to our wallets or
Mhm.
Binance, and then we withdraw it from Binance to our company account, and that's how we do it.
Mhm.
Now, again, most of the people don't even know how to do this, right? But why would I or someone use this solution, right, when there are simple ways? That's my first question.
Mhm.
And my second question is sending and receiving is not a big problem, right? Stable coins, like you can instantly create a wallet without even having a KYC. It's just the off-railing part when I need to convert into my local currency. So
Mhm.
how are you tackling that problem?
Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of the problem. So we've actually partnered with some agencies in the region, and these are like the same needs as you mentioned, right? So you, as a Web3 company, like a lot sometimes, I mean, you like probably work with a lot of Web3 native companies, so like they are quite familiar to kind of sending USDC and USDT, but a lot of independents and agencies work with clients in the US or in Europe that are not familiar with USDC or US or stablecoins in general, right? So with Sorbet, you should be able to like invoice them and they pay in the preferred payment method. So they can pay through ACH, SIPA, credit card. And what would happen is like we would convert that into USDC or USDT in your wallet. And then you should be able to also pay your contractors either like in stablecoin or their local currency. So like it's like really full flexibility between fiat and stablecoin, where the client has full flexibility on his preferred payment method.
Okay. Okay. All right. It's very interesting. So mainly you're solving the problem on the client side when they need to pay, but they don't know how to pay in crypto. With your
Hmm.
platform, they can pay and the freelancer or the company would receive it.
Exactly.
Very interesting. So, but how are you solving this problem in Saudi Arabia? Like, if crypto is not
Hmm.
regulated yet, let's say if I'm a freelancer in Saudi Arabia today and I want to receive payment in crypto, I would create an account in Sorbet. I would send them a link. They'll send the money will be in my account. But let's say I need to convert it into Riyal. How would
Hmm.
I do that?
Yeah, yeah, and that's where most of the work is happening, right? Yeah, it's not easy. There's no on and off ramps in Saudi Arabia. like when we started Sorbet a bit over a year ago, we spoke with like SEMA, which is like the Saudi Arabian monetary agency, like the equivalent of like FARA, but they kind of regulate this whole like financial landscape, and they were like really against stablecoins, literally like just a year ago, right? So that's why we started focusing like on other countries, but just recently, like the past few months, there's a very strong appetite to experiment with these technologies in a controlled environment, in like a regulatory sandbox. So we're like constantly talking with like regulators, with banks. Like we had a meeting with like two top banks in the past week, to kind of work with banks closely, but also work with Vara closely to kind of build this right in a controlled environment, in a sandbox, to potentially later on like bring this to market. Because like they do see the value of it, and also banks, they want to position themselves in a way where they don't want to be left behind once stablecoins kind of takes off. So I think it's like a win-win situation, not only for us but also
Yeah,
for
for
banks,
everyone.
but also for independents and the locals. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're familiar. There's this new startup from Pakistan, Solana, called Zar. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if you know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
And they're also solving a similar problem because my brother and my cousins are freelancers and they need to receive payments from US. And you know how they do it now? They get someone to send money to my PayPal. I
Mhm.
withdraw it from PayPal to my bank account, and then I use the BFC exchange to send them money. And
Mhm.
it's like a nightmare. PayPal charges like I think 5% or something like that on every withdrawal. So I'm like, I always keep telling them, look into stable coin and stuff like that. It's just that even though in Pakistan we have peer to peer, but
Mhm.
they're just too lazy or too scared to, just test this stuff.
Mhm.
So I do understand how big of a problem. My question on the things that you mentioned is regulation, right? A lot of founders in crypto have to deal with regulators as well, right? So how has your experience been, right? How do you remain patient? And because obviously these things take time, right? They don't move at the
Mhm.
speed of a startup. So wouldn't you sometimes think, okay, I just shut this thing, go to another jurisdiction, build there? How do you handle that, and what is your advice for other founders who might be facing these similar problems?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, it's definitely work, and you have to be patient. There's always a risk that like you might run out of money before that actually like materializes. But how we've done it is because through different service providers, there's like the likes of like Pay, Bridge, like AAA. There's a lot of like service providers that actually allows you to send send and receive stable coins to fiat in over like 90 countries. So like the infrastructure is kind of built in a lot of the countries we're targeting, right? Through like AAA or like Pay, you can off ramp in India, in Pakistan, in Philippines, in the UAE, and across North African countries, but not like and yeah, so like we're still operational. We still kind of on board to kind of test the product with people outside. So like we have people like from Nigeria, Morocco, Egypt kind of using the platform, but the goal is really to unlock Saudi. So that's how we're kind of approaching this. It's like, okay, we're testing the product in alpha with like people that also need a solution in other markets, but ideally we know that the bigger market is Saudi and the big unlock will be Saudi. So we're trying to kind of preparing ourselves for that.
Yeah, I think the title of this episode could be Build in Saudi because you're quite bullish on that.
Mhm.
Do you want to share with other founders who are not aware of how is the startup ecosystem growing there, and especially in Web3? Because from the outside, people might think, okay, it might not be as progressive as Dubai, but again, you're on the ground, you know more. So quickly, you want to share on that with other founders?
Yeah, I mean, so like just recently, we just completed the web Outlier Ventures program in Saudi Arabia. So like they also started like a Web3 native accelerator in Saudi. But of course, there's a lot of work that has to be done in regards to. I mean, there's an appetite, right? There's an appetite from like companies like Neom, a lot of like governmental institutions, are they have an appetite for it. And I think that's where like a lot of value actually comes because you actually are first mover in this country because the market is big, right? So you have the same kind of pain points as the UAE. So like all the Web3 startups that are building for the UAE, whether it's like RWAs, DeepIn, stablecoins, there's the same pain points in Saudi Arabia, but the market is just bigger, right?
And
And it's
bigger,
only
yeah.
and that's where we believe there's opportunity. Of course, there's risk being here so early, but we do see that the upside, once the market and you participate in unlocking Saudi Arabia, that the upside is going to be much greater than if we're actually operating from the UAE, which is a bit more competitive or has a more
Yeah.
competitive landscape.
Yeah. Makes sense. Amazing. All right. So before this interview, I was just signing up for your product. You might have seen that I registered. I
Yeah.
just used it and the product was seamless. So quickly share what has been, I mean, you're a developer yourself. So how has been the product development journey been? Because there are different kind of founders, one who take months and months and months to build the perfect thing, then they launch it, and then someone like just scrappy, launch it, get validation and do it. So what is your advice and experience on building a product in
Yeah.
Web3?
No, definitely build and iterate. So like it's funny, like once we first started Sorbet, the idea was really to add trust in cross-border payments. So what we've done is that we've developed like milestone-based escrow smart contracts, like an escrow system, like with full flexibility. Because like the idea of like escrow, like as a smart contracts makes much more sense as like a traditional escrow. Because like sometimes like a bank would act as an escrow, and there's always like a lot of delays with that and a lot of fees associated to like traditional escrows. So really wanted to build like a full flexibility blockchain based escrow, but there was also like kind of compliance requirements when in regards to that, because you actually hold money there. So like how we're building it now is that we don't hold money. It's like non-custodial wallets, and we have like so like we
I saw that you have integration with Privy, so
Privy,
that's
of
good.
course.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
it's like non-custodial wallets, and we work with like service providers, like a bridge that kind of handle compliance on all like fiat to stablecoin conversions. So, so like that's how we're actually be able to go to market without like a compliance officer or not much money. But yeah, the idea was like to build that fast. We saw that it was not much demand for that, that it was a bit complicated, and there was like regulatory hurdles in regards to that. With so like that's where we kind of pivoted a bit to just focus on like cross border. So like in January we actually pivoted, and in 2 months we actually built this cross border payment solution.
very
Um,
nice.
so yeah, definitely build and iterate. Talk to users. You learn a lot. Um, yeah,
Basic YC advice: talk to
yeah,
customers, ship customers.
yeah,
Amazing. So now, in a product like you, I want to talk about fundraising and business model. From what I understand, by using your product, you might charge customers a small transaction fee. So, in order for that to be sustainable, you need a lot of customers and a lot of volume. So, which means that from day one, you cannot rely on the revenue to run your operation. So, you have to raise funding. So, talk to me about your fundraising journey. You mentioned that you're raising. What have you learned? What are the do's and don'ts that other founders who are raising can do it? Because again, it's very competitive to raise funding,
yeah.
right? There's only a limited number of investors out of thousands of projects few might get invested in. So what is your approach, and then what can you share with others that they can learn from you to raise funds?
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of lucky to get accepted in these accelerators because, as you mentioned, like our revenue model is really like down the road. It's like transaction fees, one subscription model, take on yield because we also want to give access to DeFi to like non. Because what we've seen is like a lot of like startups here, they have idle cash in their bank accounts. So like giving non-Web3 natives access to yield is something that's very interesting, right? Like I'm a startup, I raise a seed or a series A, I have $3 million in my bank account just idle there. You can allow them to get access to yield at like a 4% APY. That's like
Wow.
$10,000 in approximately, right, through like Aave or Moonwell DeFi. That's like $10,000 in monthly payouts,
That's
approximately.
actually a very interesting problem. I mean, you should focus on that as well, because I can assume there are a lot of startups that have idle cash. A
Yeah,
lot
I
of
know.
startups.
Yeah. And in Web
Yeah,
three, it's like this whole idea of staking is something
yeah,
that
yeah.
common, right? Like you can stake with like $100 or or like $2,000 or $10,000. But when you see like there's companies that are doing this, like Mercury Bank, like the startup bank in the US, or like Meow, that give you access to like yield to like treasury bonds, but you need to have like a minimum $100,000 to do that, right? So like an independent users or like they don't have access to yield. So that yield is an interesting one. Giving non-Web3 startup founders that are not Web3 natives access to yield is something that has been resonating a lot with a lot of startups here. And and of course, like the close the loop, we should be also allowed to people to actually spend the USDC in the wallet. So like that's also coming up in our roadmap, is also like debit cards,
Are you
cash.
are you familiar with Cast?
Yeah, cash.
Cast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Fuse,
They,
a couple of those. Yeah, doing that.
they were everywhere in Token 24.
Mhm.
I went to one side event and they didn't let me enter until I signed up for it. So
Really,
I got the card. Yeah, so that's very interesting.
yeah.
I mean, so we were talking about fundraising. So how has been your journey? How are you approaching investors? What are you pitching? How are you selling your dream to them? Like, how are you doing it?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a tricky position. So we were able to get funding through like accelerators that are kind of early stage. But like when we actually pitched the idea, it's a very competitive landscape. So like there's a lot of products doing very similar to us in a lot of markets. Like there's like one in Philippines, there's a couple in the UAE, there's some in Nigeria, there's some in India, and there's some in South Latin America, South America, but none in Saudi Arabia. So like the thing is, like when we pitch investors, our only moat is Saudi now, because it's so hard. Like we have a year head start on anyone else just due to the length it takes you to kind of open a company and be within like a regulatory sandbox. So we do believe we have a head start, and that's kind of our moat. But the thing is, here in Saudi Arabia, because of the regulatory landscape, they don't want to invest in Web3 companies yet, or like they're a bit more cautious about it, especially when it's like a fintech company that involves money. So we're trying to, yeah, raise from angels that kind of see the long-term value of it. And that's how we're approaching it. We've onboarded a couple of angels at the moment to kind of close this round. But yeah, we do see Saudi opening up in the next year. So like the idea is we just survive for an
Yeah,
additional year, be in the
yeah.
regulatory sandbox, work with banks with like minimal money, like keeping our burn rate low until there's a big unlock, and then we can actually raise a bigger, yeah, more money.
I want to take a break and I want to talk about mindset and
Mhm.
conviction and persistence, right? You just said something that I need, if I can survive for one more year, I
Mhm.
might get the next level of growth. So
Mhm.
how have you been able to cultivate this mindset and what can you share with others? Because it's not easy, right? Because we live in an age of dopamine, like we
Mhm.
need instant gratification, like quickly. We need stuff really quickly, right? And in an age, how can you be so patient? How can you play the long game? Which is obviously what people should do, but you know,
Mhm.
not most people are not able to do it. So how are you able to have this mindset that I just need to survive and this will work?
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And yeah, I think the answer to that is twofold. So one, so like the whole idea, we do see the upside. We do see the business opportunity. Like this model is a model that works in the UAE, even though there's competition. It solves a real problem. So that upside, like being able to unlock that and get access to like that upside or that opportunity is what kind of drives us as a team. But also the second one, I think also being part um, of those talks, right? Talking with the regulators, talking with banks. That's how like I'm spending a lot of my time at the moment, and being part of that transition, because it's kind of an important moment where like a country like doesn't adopt a stablecoin to actually adopt stablecoin, and being part of that transition is also what drives us a little bit. So I think, yeah, a mix of both of those, like the upside at the end, like the light at the end of the tunnel, and also like being part of that transition are the two things that kind of drive us today and allows us to be patient, because we can't go faster, even if we
Yeah,
wanted to, we can't.
but how do you deal with doubt, or do you have no doubts?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say that I have no doubts, but I mean, what's been happening in the like, so I would, to be honest, a couple of months ago, I started having doubts. Uh, like, is it going to open? How long? But just like recently, um, like the conversations that we'd have been having with regulators, with like bigger players here in the kingdom, um, kind of gave us a bit more hope and optimism about where this is going. So like, of course, it's never always rainbows and sunshines, but I think, yeah, like just recently, the recent conversations that we were having gave us a bit more optimism in regards to this. Yeah, but it could go
Awesome.
bad in a couple of
Yeah.
months. And, yeah,
No,
but
no.
yeah, yeah.
No, we should be optimistic. So I think the summary or takeaway for founders is that obviously there is something internal, right? Which is like you have conviction and belief in yourself, but there are external factors as well. which keeps on giving you that sort of validation. Because
Mhm,
in your case, you don't really worry about PMF, right? You know there is PMF. In your
mhm,
case, it's mostly regulation and options, right? So I think as a founder, when you're in a similar position, you should just keep looking for these signals around you, and that should fuel you to keep on going. Amazing. Rami, just before we wrap, a couple of more questions. What is your approach to go to market, right? Because again, as a Web3 founder, you figure out an idea or a problem to solve, you build a product, you get the money or you get the revenue, you build a team, and then obviously one is that you need to go to market. So walk me through, because again, I saw some of your LinkedIn posts that you have gained some traction. So how were you able to do that? How were you able to get that initial traction? And what can you share with others who want to go to market and get traction?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment we've been just very scrappy because like the whole idea about go to market, especially as a consumer app, or yeah, you need network effects, you need like scale for it to work. So we've been a bit more scrappy, just like talking because we just wanted to test it with like a smaller group of users. So we've been able to onboard like over like 1,000 users at the moment with whom we're talking and find that initial core group of people that actually need the solution and kind of like speak with them closely. I mean, that's how like we're approaching this today. But we know again that the bigger opportunity is in Saudi Arabia, and we're kind of preparing ourselves for that. So, like as I mentioned before, there's 14 mega projects in Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
like over 4 million independent workers, and most of those workers send money back home, right? Um, and yeah, we had the opportunity to, like, as part of Outlier Ventures, to speak with the folks at NEOM. So, like, yeah, it's talking with these mega projects and helping their independent workers get paid digitally because Saudi Arabia has like this Vision 2030 initiative, which is like cashless payments, right? Fully digital payments, 80% cashless payments. But what happens is like in cross border payments, we're still far behind. So, like 70% of payments are still using cash
Cash.
or sending money back home. So yeah, speaking with like potentially these mega projects and having access to their independent workers to send money back home, and being we
I
would
mean,
use that as
that would be a very interesting problem to solve because from what I can understand, you might be targeting the construction workers or the laborers who might not be that educated and they know that okay, I take the cash, I go to this exchange, I give it to them and my family receive it. So that and they're not on these digital channels, I assume, like
yeah.
X or Twitter, social media.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
no, it's
very
like
interesting.
seeing them in person, and I mean, like Cash was an interesting way they've done it, right? Like
Yeah,
they educated people with an app to kind of hold money in the app and go give it to agents. So yeah, there's a way we can. I mean, there's just like a big pool of independent workers here. Like I think in construction alone, there's 4
yeah,
million, but I think
yeah,
there's close to like
yeah.
7 to 8 million independent workers here that need to send money back home.
Got it. What is your last thought before you go to sleep?
Oh, yeah,
I mean, I assume that you might be thinking about your company. I
yeah.
assume.
Yeah, yeah. The company, I think I just read about like the crypto market in general. Uh, yeah, looking at my like a bit of trading. I think
Ah, okay.
so, but
Nice,
I try
nice.
to unwind as much as I can. So, like after work, I look at my holdings and mostly try to wind off by watching something. Try to clear off my mind as much as I can.
Yeah, amazing. This has been an amazing conversation. Just before we wrap up, what is the future of Sorbet? So you mentioned cross-border payments, yield, but what do you see the future of Sorbet? Or you think we'll see as we go? Or you have a vision that this is what we will be in 10, 20, 30 years or whatever, if
Yeah,
you're taking.
yeah. I mean, it's like the main. I mean, like when you look at the space, it can go. It's like crypto. Like when you think about it today, a non-custodial wallet or a wallet for us at Sorbet allows you for cross-border payments, right? But there's a lot of things that it allows you for, like when you talk about like tokenization of different currencies, but like tokenization of like real estate. Maybe it's a way through the Sorbet wallet to kind of hold all of this, whether it's like tokenized properties or payments or deepin. It's like the one wallet for all your needs
I mean,
in a
so,
tokenized world.
so it'll become the super app in Saudi for crypto.
I
I don't
hope,
know.
crypto, property investments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, Rami, I'll add all your links in the description for your socials and your product. But is there any message that you want to share with the audience?
No, I mean, yeah, like what I would like to, I mean, we're doing a little pod, but I think like as the Web3 crowd, I mean, there's this word that I've heard before. It's like, it's not really it's not really competition or collaboration. It's like co-opetition. So like we're all like we're all collaborating on, like as Web3 people, we're all collaborating like together. Like it's not much competition between us, but we're competing about like legacy systems, right? So like as you've seen, like in like Coinbase and Circle, what they're doing in the US to kind of provide that regulatory landscape and kind of ease crypto. And I think a lot of like Web3 people should also do that in the markets, because like Web3 can only work if like the whole world is like, I mean, can work at scale if like a lot of countries kind of unlock one by one, and we have like a global system where you can send money P2P easily, and yeah, a
Yeah,
truly global financial system. And I think this is like we're trying to do that here in Saudi, but there's a lot of countries that are still a bit far behind, and yeah, we need
yeah,
people around the world
yeah.
to kind of do this to kind of get mass or wider adoption.
Yeah, just on that, I told you I'm a part of this community called Forma, and they're doing something interesting where like they go to these different countries and create the economic zones. So they
Mm-hmm.
went to Argentina, then Sri Lanka, and now they're going to Kazakhstan as well. So
Okay.
they are actually doing this. They're unlocking new
Forma.
territories for crypto people. Yeah, do I'll share a link with you, but do check them out. It's amazing. All right,
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much for coming on, Rami. It was a pleasure. I learned a lot, especially about the Saudi market, and I hope the audience can also learn. With that, we'll wrap up the episode. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next episode.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Talha.